So we will float a little bit here and there, but be relevant anyway, and then I pick the right thing. But I actually, thinking about it, I want to start with a sheet that comes from a teaching from Christoph Loy, and I thought this is just so fundamental that we start with that early enough. And it's called Keys for Team Unity. Also that you know, I might race through some of the things and tip on them, and then maybe you guys can come back to it, or we can come back to it as you need it in the school. I'm quite aware that now 3 weeks ahead, you know, it's like, you know, the team is not even here, not even everybody is around. But for some things, I just also thought it might actually be a blessing to have time even before the school starts, and maybe realize, man, we need to clarify this, you know, or this could really be a help. And this is why I picked this right now. And I wanted to, actually, I mainly want to focus on point 1. It may sound a bit weird, because this was the question that I already announced in the beginning, that you, Susanna, answered already partly, which is, what do you want to see happening in the next 6 months? Mm-hmm. What is the purpose that you want to achieve? What should God do? What should happen with the students? What is the goal of why we're doing what we're doing? Mm-hmm. Now, this is also, just to take it beforehand, this is a very good question for outreach. Mm-hmm. Later on, what do we want to do there? Why do we do what we do? You know, and one answer could be because we have to. It's part of the curriculum. Mm-hmm. That might be better one, even though that is totally valid. So reasons why you do a DTS could be, we don't want to have an empty house, we don't want to have an empty agenda, we want school fees. I mean, of course, these are all not really the top reasons. Mm-hmm. And as I said in the beginning, I think the DTS is also a gift from God to the church. Mm-hmm. So one question might even be, what does God want to do? You know, what's his idea about what should be happening? And of course, there are things that are written down in the curriculum. This is the purpose of DTS. But the reason I bring it up here as well is I believe some of the things that are happening around your heart or in your heart will be tools that God wants to use. And some will align very well, and some might be a bit different. Like I said, when I look at Ruben, I know he's an evangelist. And Ruben wants to be out there. You don't want to be in the school, generally. This is not the most exciting setting for you. You want to be out with the people, you want to lead them to Christ, you want to have conversations. You will always be drawn more to the fringes. If there's any structure, you'd rather be out there with the people, you know. And this is something that's absolutely necessary and needed. We come later to the roles. Also, where are you at? You know. But something needs to be where we say, this is what we all want to see. This is why we are here. This is why we do it. And this is books.
That's all right. You can continue.
Yeah, are you still there? Are you coming? No. So bad. Thank you all for sharing, and that was the end of our discussion.
It's our internet, I'm sure.
Okay.
It's okay. He'll call back.
Good. So you've seen some of the questions. What do we want to achieve? What are our expectations? What is our common goal? Mm-hmm. There are some scriptures. Now I didn't start there, but some have quite some significance. As for lack of guidance, the nation falls, but many advisors make victory sure. So for lack of guidance, a nation falls. That's very interesting. This has some part of leadership in there. Mm-hmm. There is some leadership needed in terms of even communicating this is where we want to get at. Mm-hmm. And depending on where you go, if you go, for example, to the Herrenhut base, I mean, it's like, go to the unreached, go to the unreached, go to the unreached, go to where no one has gone before. It's just stated again and again and again. And even if this wasn't your goal at the beginning, you kind of own it after a while. You're like, man, this is what we want to do, or you go to a prophetic base, and it's like encountering God, Well, maybe that should be it. Anyway, you see where I'm leading to. And for some it's healing and counseling and getting people restored, and for some it's being out on the streets, And hopefully it's a mix of that. But what is it? What is the guidance? Where do we want to go? This is not just true for a nation, but for us as well. You see the example in Joshua 14:12. This is Caleb speaking, and he says, "Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Anakites were there, and their cities were large and fortified, but the Lord helping me, I will drive them out just as he said." This is Caleb, and he's already 80. And I don't know if you know the story, Promised Land, most people almost all died, but 2. And then they come into the land, and they're like, okay, how do we take it? How do we distribute it? And Caleb is like, that. This is what I want. He knew exactly. And it wasn't the easiest part that he claimed. I mean, the hill country was like, this is tough. You don't want to fight on the hills against the people who are there already, except if you're on the hill, that's nicer. But he's kind of, this is what the Lord has promised. This is the purpose. And so this is also important. What has the Lord promised? What has he spoken? As much as he has about the school, This might not just be, again, hopefully you have had some times where you prayed and you listened, but it might be things, not even sitting together and praying for the school, but things he has spoken to your own heart, things they are burning there right now, and this, never make such a clear distribution and say this is school and this is just me. I think over the years I've seen this doesn't work. Sometimes God prepares me for something, and suddenly I'm in school and just all this stuff pops out, and it's mingling. So what's going on? What's your hill country? What is where God says, this is where I want to be. This is what I'm aiming for, even as staff or as leader, because it's very possible that this will be something that also the students will pick up. Habakkuk 2:2, Habakkuk was talking to God and saying, now speak to me, I want to know what is it, and it sounded a bit more like personally, just let me hear it, and then God says, no, wait, I want you to write it down. This is not just for you. This is for everybody, and so you need to put it into words, you need to make it clear, you need to be able to communicate it that somebody else can run with it. It's almost like a mission statement, even if somebody asks your student, what is this school about, they would be able to say it. It's not just it's in your heart somewhere, but it's out there. So what is our common goal? These are some of the questions. And then maybe also, whom are we standing against? What are some of the things that will challenge us, in DTS in general, or maybe even in this school? So this is my introduction. I just want to open up the topic and see what you guys think already. Is that clear, or what do you know? How much can you communicate? What do you want to see happening in the next month?
I mean, for me, it goes very much into what Susanna already said. I always have this picture of, leading people close to God's heart, which is, into God's presence, because I believe that this is a place where people encounter God, where transformation happens, where there is a change. And I mean, that would be very, like that. Let's say the general one, and then you can also ask, what changed? And I mean, it can be healing, but it can also be set free from things that are binding people. And maybe set free to, give their life for God and to do what God has called them to do in their life. But I think the first one is, really, that the students encounter God.
Students encounter God.
And through that also change.
Okay, encounter God, be set free, and that God can do in their lives what He wants to do in their lives. I think that was something that I might come back to that, you know, maybe keep it in mind. I haven't written it down now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Mine goes in the same direction as well. I think that's what we talked about from the beginning. We talked about the classic idea of the DT is that people will get character building, more of a drawing closer to God, and the transformation in the needed areas. I mean, transformation in the sense like there are probably areas that I need to work on it so I get transformed. Just leave that behind and walk forward towards more drawing more closer to God. That's main idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for me, it's more to be with them, you know, and this time, and to live a life that is, you know, that they would see that difference in me or in us, and that's more than anything. And then, I mean, as the focus is more on transformation, and we wanted to see that, you know, find out where they are at the moment, and to see, you know, how much better we can, you know, facilitate them to, you know, to God in their relationship where they are at the moment, and to see, you know, this 6 months or maybe 3 months or 5 months of this time, you know, they would discover the purpose or the future, you know, and for what God has, you know, for why God has brought them here, you know, more transformation within and transformation, you know, through them. You know, it's you know, that covers the whole thing, because within that is the healing, inner healing, or whatever, you know, they are at the moment where they want to find God and all that. And not only that, it's just limited within, it's also to be seen in the outreaches. You know, it's through them being expressed or being shown and carried to others, you know. So that is something altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a package.
Just try to find a word that would summarize it. Like, more the question, how do you know this is happening? You know? I just wonder if one word could be to activate them. I don't know. I don't want to put it in, you know, just if you want to, what is the difference between before and after, you know?
So simply the change in that. Yeah, I mean,
it's good to think about it, you know, how do we know we're reaching that goal? And maybe also negatively worded, how do we know we are drifting? You know, we're doing some things, but actually it's all nice, but it's not it's not what we want to see mainly. Because this is where I'm mainly struggling with, you know. I mean, if people start drinking, smoking, and that's almost clear, that's not what we want to see. But sometimes you do all kinds of things, and it's all good, and it's kind of, the school is running. That's what usually my struggles are. But after a while I realized, man, that the core of what I want to see happening is not happening. You know, people handing in papers and blah blah blah, and it's like, yeah, but what is it that I really want to see? You know, what is it that God really wants to do or be? But some others, how would you word it?
I would say, similar to what Simone and Susanna shared before, it should be a time where the students come closer to God and meet God, and through that, change will happen, and they will be excited for God. Because I think whoever meets God will be excited for Him. And then also go back to their church or wherever God leads them, and live for God.
Good. So Susanna, you want to restate your further statement, or you're still up to that?
Yeah, definitely. Still on that. me, my PTS was that stepping point for like that jump into like, okay, God, like my life is not my own anymore, like, and I really follow you. And so I really hope that what it is for each student that comes, that they can really grab hold of that. In encountering God and in really knowing who He is and the different aspects of Him. And,
How can that happen best? Or what would be, like if you say this is our purpose, this is why we do the school. Couple of questions, but they're all around the same thing. What would facilitate that best? What would help most that this happens? What might you be standing against? What might hinder it? Very realistically in the school, and what might be, like what I said in the beginning, what might be the second and third and fourth best, really nice and good things that could happen as well, or that students could pick up and learn and take away from the school, but that are not this. What is competing, What would really need to happen that they could have, that they would reach that goal? Like in the schedule, in the one-on-ones, in the small groups, if this is always the goal, how do you do that?
Yeah, good question.
I know.
Okay. Well, one thing I wrote down that I really need to work on is just to ask the Lord to really love each student. And I think that's going to be a big thing, like our attitude, and how we engage with them, and how much they see that we do genuinely care about them, and that we are genuinely excited that they're there, and that we want them to see God. I think for me, during my one-on-one sessions, like when I was struggling about it, that was really important for me, I think. To be able to be open and vulnerable, and really see that my one-on-one cared about me. He cared about my journey, even if it was like good or hard or like whatever it was. So just an attitude of love. I think it's really good to have that for me.
So love, and I think one important word was openness. To help them open up. Let's say first of all maybe to each other or the staff, or with the one-on-one, but then finally hopefully also to God, because it's actually the same. We're close everywhere, Very good. What else? Yeah.
It's a very good question, because I thought about it a lot. I mean, you can't force people to encounter God, or you cannot tell them it's something. It's very. I think it's a challenge to achieve, or to see that happening. And I don't know. It might also be different for different people how they meet God. I mean, it might be through one-on-one and walking alongside them and pointing them to God. For some, maybe it's in their Bible reading. For some, in worship. I don't. Yeah.
I mean, one thing I remember from my DPS was, she also mentioned about one-on-one, and for me also it was more. This guy who was really mentoring, or who was doing one-on-one, was more than a one-on-one for me.
Mm-hmm.
And he never fixed with that timing, or he always said to me that, Ruben, anytime you could come home. And even when Simone came, and there were a lot of things, we were not married and things like that, and he was willing to give the room for to stay, host her, and for he took care of me during the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because he is just coming and asking you what you want,
mm-hmm.
and you find it very comfortable to share anything that you want to share with him.
Mm-hmm.
And very mature in handling, showing, express. When you even talk to him about your struggles, and the way of his answer was not so spiritual, or not
Mm-hmm.
super thing that you cannot. And he always found a very common ground
Mm-hmm.
between what he is. He never acted like I'm a leader, or I'm somebody who. I always felt, even today we have a good a friendship, or it's going on. I think this is the time. It's not only one-on-one. This is where the place where we could show them what we are. Whatever we our lives will speak more than what. Sometimes I also had some disturbance. People who were speaking but not really in life.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are. We are there to see them. Because we have an opportunity here. It's not 1 or 2 days, for 6 months. Or so we can definitely minister to them through our lives more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I believe that that is that I'm excited about that, and I would like to have more people coming into our house.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe but inviting them and sharing and hearing from them and doing things for them. And they should. Some of them would come with a very bad impression of a Christian life or church, or and in the past. And I know that and they would really should find the genuine love.
Mm-hmm.
And the genuine, fellowship of, being a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that I wanted to, see that, it's happening every moment, even my expressions.
Mm-hmm.
I am, my angry, or my frustration, and all these negative things that how I'm handling, it's not just you are hypocrisy, or just because before them you are acting.
Mm-hmm.
And you are also learning, you are also being renewed, and that's what we say. We want to be renewed in mind, and renewal of transformation. Yeah, that should be carried even in our life after school. If we are not in the school and after school.
Yeah.
So how would you just try to narrow it down a bit? Sorry.
Yeah.
Put you back here. How would you say, like you mentioned the one-on-one now, especially in the beginning, could you say, how did it draw you closer to God? One sentence?
This openness, as you mentioned, that I was able to share my weakness to him, And when I opened to him, and I feel so much released, and I also found it, God also knows that, because, God, of course, I was able to freely communicate to God.
Mm-hmm. So even after he was gone, or when he was not there, it still opened up your way to God.
Sure.
Because I think that's important. I just wanted to make the distinction, because we can also draw people to us.
Yeah.
Which is sometimes, it's actually not nice for us as well.
Yeah.
After a while you feel a bit burdened and high expectation. And then also for the people, they can become dependent. Sometimes we have that. Students who always come, and you feel it after a while. Like, man. But I think the part of making them hungry and giving them an example. So one of the questions could be, how are you when you have an encounter with God? How do you know that? How do you show that? How can they see that and get hungry as well? What else might help? What might hinder? Yeah.
No, one thing that could help, but I think it also goes in openness, is also testimonies. of what God is doing or what
Mhm.
God is teaching. Or I mean, I find it encouraging
Yeah.
to hear from others, and I really think that's something that builds up.
Mhm. Yeah.
So there should be room for that.
Oh.
So if we think about the schedule or so, it should be, yeah, that should have room.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Personally, I mean, if I look back my DTS, I was pretty young and I didn't had all these things to open up, and I'm like, yeah, I just came straight from the school and there was not much going on. It's just that I had few stuff with my dad and me, and there was some stuff, but other than that, I was the last person to cry in the DTS.
Mhm.
But what really challenged me was that my times in the class, especially the challenges that they threw in, I took up almost everything, and I'm like, I wanted to put it into practice. That was my the way how I processed it in my head, and that was the idea also that I went to DTS. Like, okay, whatever it's going to be, I'm going to pick it up. And I wanted to be a good Christian. I wanted to be like this. I wanted to grow close to God from this time onwards, like when I'm still young. That was my head, and by the time I went there, my small group wasn't that really helpful either, or one-on-one wasn't that helpful either. But there was one person that who really challenged me. He was there was a guy called Dave Lawrence. He was here as well.
Mhm.
This one was he always challenged me. The thing that I'm like, wow, oh, am I going to really do that? Wow. To my little head, those were seemed to be bigger those days, but it still put a in a process in a way like I can do this, you know. I can really make myself like go into the system so I can grow more closer to God. He put a lot of challenges in he probably didn't realize that he was doing it, but that was really helpful. And just to see him, the way he walked his life, he was a single guy, everybody thought he was a gay, or he was different than everyone, but he was pretty straight in his teachings and just the way his life was amazing. Yeah, that was something I would say. I mean, yes, obviously the teachings as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But I like what you said about you wanted to apply them. I think it's really key.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's where we need to come in, you know, and you realize people sitting and they just taking notes and give good answers, and it's like, man.
It's more than.
When you said the things that would hinder, one thing was definitely was people embarrassing me. That was like not at all helpful. Although it was probably funnier because I was probably it was because I'm young. I
didn't get it.
People embarrassing you in front of others.
Embarrassing, yeah.
It was not at all helpful, and I couldn't digest it. At the times I'm like, forget it, man. I just don't want to be here. That was.
You mean also blaming or not blaming?
It's just that people pick on you.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's never nice.
I mean, that is not love.
It's a friendly atmosphere, but probably they're not really intending to do that. You know? But you feel like, yeah, that was one thing, and yeah. I think it's just my little head that couldn't process some of the things like controlling me or people picking on me was like, I didn't like it. But especially staff doing that was not helpful at all.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that can also hinder it is if we are not one. If, I don't know, if we have a fight or argue or I don't know. I really think that can also be.
Yeah.
Or if one goes this way and the other this way because we don't find the middle. Or.
Yeah. what could people do instead of encountering God?
Encountering themselves.
Maybe entertaining.
Entertain themselves. Sometimes I think it's also good to think about that. I mean, I'll give you an example. I mean, for me, one of the challenges every year, and I'm not doing so well. I mean, I have witnesses, you know. It's really it's also very easy to go through the program. You know, to just have good teaching, have good content, kind of have the best food on the table, but somehow it's not digested, you know, or it's so much, and it's one reason could be I figured lately there's more and more I sometimes figure that people don't have an intention to apply. They don't come and say, how can I do this? You know, but they just hear it, oh, that's interesting, let me ponder it, let me see if I want this, you know, and then it stays totally fruitless.
Yeah.
It's like, man, if you have no intention of really grabbing it, and now one of my challenges is that I because I love teaching, I present more than they could possibly apply. So it could be even overwhelming, and you know, what do I do? So maybe have less content, more application. You know, another thing was, I think for me in Switzerland, that's a national spiritual thing. It's an organization thing. We organize things differently, and if there's a problem, we think, how can we solve it? And we talk a lot, and say, there's almost no room for God. It's like we are right away, like, how can we get it under control again? Instead of, how can we enjoy, no, how can we be relaxed with the situation not being under control, but really putting our energy into prayer. Say, God, do it, you know. Another thing could be, how often do I... We had a concept some years ago which we applied a bit more firmly, and that was the go to God. Basically, when students came, we said, look, go to God. Go to God. I mean, you can overdo it, you know, especially when it comes to the one-on-one, if you're like, talk to God first, you know. If you're a very prophetic type, you might do this actually, and just send them to God all the time. It can be so annoying. But sometimes it can be also very good, you know, and realize, man, if I'm not there, if the school is over, this is the muscles I want them to strengthen, to be able to make decisions, to be able to not rely on the leaders, you know. I mean, decision making, the whole problem or challenge, that the challenge even for the BLS students, you know, you go on outreach and, you know, it's just like, don't care about all the teachings and doing everything right. Just if you know how to pray and ask God and rely on Him, that's good. You know? This is what I want the students also to mainly get. And realizing one of the main ways they develop this is through problems. I mean, seriously, if everything goes smooth, you don't learn that. You know, but then problems are the enemy of every good Swiss. Of every person anyway, you know, but you just want to solve them, you just want to get them under, you know, you want to get back to the plan, you know. And sometimes this is good to realize, okay, what is my main purpose? Because I realized as a school leader, my main purpose was shifting to, I want a smooth school. I want everybody to be in line, you know, and realizing, no, that's not the main thing. You know, or I do all kinds of things, but there's almost no room to meet God, or even in worship. Say we have a worship time, and say, whoa, testimonies. You know what? And sometimes you need to make room for it. You need to always create space. And this is challenging because it's hard to put. We had it in one school. We put in Evening with God, and we had nothing planned. We just said we meet, sit together, pray, and say, God, what do you want to do? Because we were so desperate, you know, like, you know, and it was interesting. Sometimes it worked, and sometimes we got so nervous that we planned something again, you know, or we cut it out again. But how could, even if we have something planned, how can I always have the mindset, God, you're always more important than whatever we had planned. If I sense you're doing something. Just to give you some other examples, you know, how can we lead the small groups so people encounter God in there? How can I do my one-on-one so people encounter God in there? How can I do the lectures so people encounter God? How can we introduce the work duties so people encounter God in there? You know, I mean, just basically say this is what we want to see happening. You know, so whatever we do, this should be the goal, you know. And some things would be how can I help that they would open up and feel safe, not be picked on, you know, be loved by their one-on-ones. How can I help them get a desire to apply things? Because then they run for it. How can I activate them? That's almost the same thing, you know. That how do they get a passion? I always think lately I heard this again. I'm praying for discipline, you know, and I'm like, okay. Maybe I should pray for passion, because discipline I get really on the legalistic side, right and wrong, and this is what I should do. And I'm like, man, I want a hunger, you know. I know I still need some discipline, but in the past I was like, oh, I don't have a desire, so I cannot do anything, which is a bit simple, obviously. But to go on the other side and say, I just need the discipline, and you know, it's like pray for both, you know. And how can I see? I mean, in my DTS, I saw people. That was for me the same. I saw people who I thought I want to be like them. Every morning they had something to share from their quiet time. I was like, man, this is, wow, you can live like that, you know. I've never seen this. And that made me go and pray and read my Bible and say, God, speak to me, you know. Or even intercession times, like I said. I mean, I've seen stuff happen. I was like, that was the best thing to motivate me. And I sometimes still miss it, because I have tasted it back then, you know, how it was, you know. So how can that happen, you know? Sorry, I talk too much. Other thoughts on purpose, on reaching the goal, and what might hinder it, what might distract.
I was thinking, I don't know how true it could be, but if you get overwhelmed, I think there's less chances of applying the things. In my case, I get lost into me, because if I have set things, then I know, okay, this is what I need to do. But if I get too overwhelmed, I'm like, it freezes my head, like, yeah.
Oh God. Now, if you all agree on that purpose, wherever you are at, which I think you do, you know, it's not impossible, but kind of keep it in mind. It will really shape what you're doing, and you will be perceived as a team. You all say, you know, they go from one to the other, and everybody's like, man, you should encounter God. You know, this is what I want to go for. And it has a different flavor maybe every time, through experience, through quiet times. How can they become relevant? You know, how can I help you really meet Him and not meet a book or a ritual, or have some fresh air, you know, in that sense. And be also honest and vulnerable and walk with you, not expect it to happen overnight, but make you hungry, and you know, but also for yourself, and help each other, because you need that. I could. The last thing I could ask again on the negative side: what hinders you most of the time to encounter God? Where do you usually get stuck if you don't walk all the way? Because that will be also the most challenging thing that you could bring into the school that will stop others from going all the way.
My to-do list. I want to get things done, and yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me also the to-do list, but also too many things at once. Would really, yeah. And sometimes I think that's still fine. I just don't know where's the balance at the moment. Like, at the times, too many things at once, it's kind of fine, but at times it's like, wow, okay, this is too much.
It's always the same. I tend to first do things, then, you know, like sit down and maybe, you know, start slow. When I see things, I'm like, I just want to get this done. But it's also not always.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Let's leave you there.
Mhm.
Encouragement would be, as you look at very specific, as you look at your schedule, let's say the weekly schedule, to really take time and look through it and say, how is this serving this goal? This is the main purpose of the DTS. You know, is this leading towards that? And the second question, is it doing it automatically?
Mhm.
Or what could we do? How could we even introduce it? I think that would be very, very important. How do we introduce things that people realize this is the goal? You know, it's like the Bible cafe is not the goal in itself. Or if you have any like guidelines, I saw such a big difference between 2 years ago and last year in introducing the guidelines and realizing, look, this is why we have them. This is what probably will happen. You know, this is where you will be challenged, but also what you could gain, and at least I hope it made a difference. And maybe also say, and maybe even evaluate after 2 weeks and say, is this serving the goal? And if it's not, maybe even be bold and say, let's kick it out and put something in there that we realize we need more. You know, like we have enough content but not openness. How do we switch, maybe in the small group, work more towards openness, you know, on that, or maybe work more towards application, or work more towards making people hungry and have more times of testimony. You know, I know for me impatience is another thing that, you know, and then I rather, like, again, too many things, I'd rather jump to something where I get quicker gratification. You know, I do the drive-through instead of taking the time to cook a good meal with God. So look where it, and be vulnerable. Also with the students and say, hey guys, you know, and otherwise get people. If you have a speaker and you know that's an anointing they have, that is something they have lived and seen, let them emphasize this. You know what you can bring in, and you know what you want to learn yourself, where you're hungry. I try to get any prophetic person I get a hold of, because it's my deepest hunger, and I still think I'm not there. You know, so not so much because I want to learn how to do it, but I want to get hungry again. I want to see it in people and say, man, yeah, you know. Or have people who have testimonies about what happens on the street, you know. So I get hungry again. I'm like, there's nothing happening there, not in my life. So I focus on other areas where I get satisfied, you know. But I think you identified some good areas, you know, with application and things like this, where often it's not automatic, you know, where there it would be good if you had the right moment there and do it. Like my school leader who came every morning, almost every morning. It was funny. He started with sharing what God spoke to him. Boy, I mean, like, literally, I mean, maybe not every, but 2-3 times a week he was up there and like, hey, God gave me a word for you, and this is what I think, and I'm crying, and I was like, whoa, you know, I got so hungry. I thought, man, this is how you could, every morning you're full of God already, you know, and I know I haven't done this. And I'm like, oh. And this guy even had a kid. No clue how he did it. Oh.
I might take a leave now.
Okay.
Go for it,
yeah, that's fine. Oh man, we already. Like,
yeah, I have to.
See that.
Yeah, fine.
Susanna, bye.
So now you can see everybody who's still in the room.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go on with this, but I think that was the point I wanted to take most time to talk about right now. The second point I will only touch on quickly. Again, these are all points for team unity. Now think firstly about you as a team, but also again have in mind your outreach team, your students, whatever teams you will be working with, you know, because you will always be part of the team. And if these things are clear, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
Now the second one is call, it's God's call, which is, why are you in the team? How did you get into the team? What made you to become part of this school? How has God called you? You know, has God spoken to you to be part of the school? For the students, how has God called you to the DTS? What made you come to Switzerland? Or later on, what made you enter this outreach team? I remember, like I said, I try to make it a priority as much as possible that students hear themselves which team they should join. Because I think it is an important part to know God wants me to be here. Maybe you don't know what for, you don't have the purpose clear or your role, but at least you know this is where God wants me to be. So also for you guys, how has the process been happening that you ended up here? Do you have peace about it? If you have peace about that, you think it's the right place at the moment, and that God wanted you to be here, other challenges are easier to face. Like, for example, for Monica saying, I don't feel ready, I feel, So one question is, do I think it's good? I think God was in there, and then this is the level we're all on. Whatever expectations might be, whatever, we can say God, like I remember Paul Hawkins saying, if you ordered it, I'm not ready, I don't have the money, I don't have the strength, I don't have blah, 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 but that's your thing.
Yeah.
You wanted me here, so... And that's really important, because we need that. No matter how much we thought it's good, we come to our limits, sooner or later. And we need to know, God wanted me to be here.
Yeah.
So what is His promise to you? There might be some words. This is also important. It's in two ways. It's important when people have them, that they are able to express it and it gets confirmed, but it's also important to make room. In the school, make room, again, as much as possible, that God can call, even to missions later, can speak about a nation, can speak about whatever it might be. Are you called to do this empty? Where you should be in this team and make this firm. But sometimes this is where we are attacked in our identity. It's just, maybe it's the wrong school, maybe I should have gone here, I should have gone there. Just try to make room at the beginning where people can, again, state it and make clear, I think this is the right place, because God said it. Now, if they come from a Pentecostal background, they might word it like this. If not, they might say, well, I looked at this and looked at that and talked to my parents and then one important part might be to help them see, do you think it's God who led you this way? Because from your tradition, obviously God couldn't say hello. Maybe you weren't quiet and say, what are my thoughts, and this is the voice of God. If you don't operate this way, God is faithful, but try to recognize Him in it. Try to get away from, it's only me. To hear God is the foundation for faith. We need faith, like I said in the beginning. We always have challenges, and then we need to have something that we can rely on, mainly faith in God. That's what I mean, not just faith. But say, God, you will help me, you will bring me through, you will save me, not just my life in general, but in this situation. The third point is roles. This is sometimes also a challenge, I think, also in YWAM, because they're changing very quickly. We sometimes have a bit of a struggle in how to define them. What am I doing? We do this together. I've been a big friend of not having clear roles, and sometimes it brought also quite some confusion, like whose responsibility is it? Like if it's not done, whose fault was it? It sounds all a bit weird. This is more in terms of tasks, but then there are also roles that you will figure, like I said in the beginning with Ruben. Probably if anybody says, we need to go out and we need to reach the people and let's go to the asylum seekers home, this will be a role he will naturally take. It's in there. And sometimes you have somebody who says, we need to seek the Lord and let's stop discussing, let's pray, and it's kind of more the prophetic role. And somebody says, man, the people are overworked, they need some rest, and we need to have a ministry time, and more the pastoral role. So we will, tomorrow I want to do a little bit of team building. Some will be with personalities, some will be with what might be your role spiritually in the team. Are there some things you're leaning to naturally to help you even know this about each other? I think Monica is the only one who's done this. I think you were a team builder as well, like some of this part. And I will pass out some things, Susanna, for you also, that you can prepare this, and then for everybody else as well. And maybe you could send it to Maya also. Sure. That kind of, that's done. lately I've been reading some leadership books, and it's quite amazing how much every book emphasizes that you should work within your strengths. I'm still working myself through it because I know, maybe it's from my upbringing and also from, I think it's also in the Bible, we sometimes tend to focus on this is where I'm not good yet, this is the weaknesses that I need to work on. This is where God is shaping me and cutting me, and you know what I mean. We all know where we are lacking. Now again, maybe I'm overemphasizing this, but I also think in Switzerland this is a spiritual thing. You always look to what's missing, what's not good. In Germany as well. We are like complaining about everything, and ourselves included. Like, where I see in America, it's much more work with your strength, and this is great, and this is good, and I can do it, you know. And here it's more like, oh, this is lacking, that is lacking, I'm not good at this, no, you know. Most leadership books emphasize work with your strengths and focus on them. And the big but that comes always is, yeah, but somebody needs to do this as well. If I just focus on what I can do well, nobody will do this. Have you ever heard this? You know, this is right away. And some say, well, don't care. Sounds a bit weird, you know, but I mean, if somebody's dying, do it. But often they said, if you are working with your strengths, if you're working with where you are good at, people will see this as a leader. Now this is leadership books. And often they are drawn to that. Because they see you can rise to this level, so they have faith, they could rise in their area. You know what I mean? It's like they see some excellence. In some area they see excellence. And people who see that are drawn to, usually the ones who also want to go for excellence. If you are trying to do everything, you will always be a little bit mediocre. Because a lot of your energy will flow into some things that you will never get excellent in. But they still take lots of energy, you know. And what happens is that usually mediocre people are drawn to that. And in the end you're all like, boo, you know. And he says, from his experience, when you work in your level where you're really good, often it doesn't take long until people are drawn who really like to fill in the other areas. Now for me, it's recent that I read it. I still need some faith for that and say, man, I really think that really happens, you know. Will we get people for this or that? If it's visible. But I just want to say, I want to encourage you, try to work within your strength. This needs more communication with each other, and say, mainly also to say, is it okay? Are you fine if I only do this, or if I mainly do this? Because we often think, well, you know, but I should do this as well, and I should do that as well, you know, and I should serve. Now, test it. I want to say this as well. Test it, bring it before God. You know, I like to emphasize this a bit more. I know we are sometimes, I think there's a bit of a tension between servant leadership, and often we equate servanthood with, I need to do the things I don't like, because then I will be a good servant. And I would say this is definitely true. Often this is true. But sometimes it's not. And I've sometimes seen leaders who served everybody, but the one thing they didn't do was lead. Like in the areas where they would be really strong. Now sometimes servanthood is their really strong area. So it could, like for example, Regula was, I mean, she was just great in all of this. And this was the main way she led. You know, through very practical background work. This was amazing. She was good at this. You know, this was the main way she led. But that might not be true for everybody. Stefan will be different. And I hope he will be. You know, if he would try to copy Regula, not good. You know, something will be missing. Now people who know me know where I'm strong and where I'm not so strong. So find a role where you realize I can run with this. This is where I'm at, and this is sometimes good to communicate it. This is mainly what I want to say, and talk to each other. You know, and sometimes it's okay to say I'm really bad at this. You know, do you think I could do less of this? And maybe not. Maybe you realize, okay, in this team, somebody needs to do it, but try to focus on an area of strength. I want to try that more. I figured that we had some schools, for example, we talked about the one-on-ones, and some were like, oh, maximum 2, you know, and some said, man, give me 4, give me 5, you know, I don't care, I love it. you know. And so in the beginning was like everybody does, we share them equally, everybody has 3 or 4, you know. Now I might go more into, okay, you take 5 and you take 2, and then you do more of this, you know. And often somebody says, like, you give me the bookkeeping, give me, I don't know, you know. And I think it's good. So this is something, but you need to talk about it. That's why I say I don't want to go into detail, who does what are the roles. You have obviously some practical roles that you need to fill in, you know, that need to be done. You will have people roles, leadership roles, spiritual roles, prayer, I mean, all of these things. And some obviously everybody needs to do it to a certain degree, but some release each other. And as you grow in your strength, as your students can see different staff rise, you know, of course we have some people who were more upfront, sharing prophetic words, and you know, not everybody did it, but I only needed 1 or 2 of these examples to get hungry. I wasn't there with my list and say, but Carsten never came up front and shared a word, you know, what's wrong with him, you know. No, run in your strength and people will see it and they will rise to more excellence. This is really, really good. Some of the things that you see here, you will also encounter as you are leading teams, like with your small groups or with your outreach teams later. You know, sometimes there's the facilitator, one guy who helps the group process, keeps on track, encourages participation of others in giving information, opinion. Basically the guy who says, now you, now you, now you. That's often a leadership type of person as well, who makes room and looks that everything is covered. You know, or task and people, like after a while, like, let's get back on track. You know, what about this? You have the harmonizer. That's often pastoral people, reconcile disagreements, reduce tension, get people to see, look, you're different, it's not bad, you know, let's embrace the differences, try to make compromises. And usually it's good to have these people on the team. It's not nice if there's a tension and everybody just looks to the leader to kind of now deal with it. You know, it's good to have people who help bring peace. And sometimes it can be annoying if you as a leader know you need the tension now so people can grow. And others always want to cover it up and say, oh, let's not talk about it, it's fine, you know. You're like, no, it's not, you know, let's talk about it, you know, just so you know. But people get these roles after a while, and you can spot them. You can see who is rather trying to keep the peace and who wants to stir the pot. You know, supporter, they are very nice. You know, they basically help and say, oh, this was great, thank you, and I always like when you share this, you know, and they also help you. The tester, it says test if the group is ready for consensus, asking to see if a group is reaching a decision for possible conclusion. So he's like, so is this really like this? Are we all on the same page? Do you think that as well? You know, kind of want to make sure it's really done properly and we really all agree. The follower is the guy who just follows. I mean, sometimes you don't see much contribution, but it's still a positive one. You know. And then you see some negative roles that are sometimes there as well. You have a blocker sometimes who always argues or resists or disagrees beyond reason. Now this is the important point. It's fine to disagree, you know, but sometimes you're like, okay, come on. It's just like, I don't, you know. Or comes back to the same dead issue. Like something you've tried to resolve and you've kind of moved on, and it's like, yeah, but what about that? You know, like, oh, please. You know. Pray into that, and again, sometimes you really need to address it. And say, this is not good. You're hindering the process, you're hindering that we go somewhere. Again, pray what's going on, why is the person doing it, is it an attention issue, is it that the person always felt, I never heard. I mean, like Mia is in her terrible twos now. That's like sometimes like a blocker. Whatever you say is like, no! Even if you're like, you want ice cream? No! Let's get ice cream. You know? But first it's block, you know, like, you know, and sometimes it almost looks like that, like puberty, you know, what's going on? The disgressor, getting on the subject and then leading the discussion in some personally oriented direction. You know, it's always, you always end up on the same topic, no matter where you started. Finally, you talk about the end times, or no, I mean, it could be also good things. You talk about suddenly about evangelism, or about inner healing, or but it's always like you kind of can be. And often, again, it's often because it's something that's really stirring within the person, and they almost need to talk about it. But sometimes it can become a role. My role is to bring everybody there. It's like, if you're not the leader, maybe it's not. The joker, maybe you've seen these people, center of attention, always making jokes, always having a funny thing to say, and it's often very much enjoyed. That can sometimes be a bit annoying. It's a person and the team is really going for it. Like, man, I don't want to kill the fun, but I need to, now it's serious. Absentee, the guy who's always somewhere else, either in person or in his thoughts, and you're like, man, how do I get it? And the aggressor, sometimes a very cynical guy. Now, roles might be a strong word. I mean, I hope nobody thinks I need to do this in the team. But sometimes you can actually identify it. You can say, look, it's not sometimes this, sometimes it's always the same person. And then sometimes it might be good to address it, to say, look, this is really a role you're taking. I can see this as a pattern, and this is happening in the group. Are you aware of what's going on? Now again, try to not just focus on this is not good for the group, or this is, like sometimes the way it's perceived, that this is not good for my leadership. And sometimes people really don't care. I mean, they should. We should love each other, and say, oh, if it's distracting my leader, maybe I could pull back. But often it's like, you're just uncomfortable, now you put it on me. You deal with it, But bring Jesus in the picture and say, look, this is not good. This doesn't bring the kingdom. This is not making room for the Holy Spirit. This is not bringing unity. This is not creating an environment where God's kingdom can come in our midst, where healing can happen. So this is serious. In that sense, I want to say, bring a fear of God sometimes and say, look, you are resisting the Holy Spirit. It's not just my leadership. Now, I wouldn't start there, obviously. And if you're more than one leader, the big chance that you have is always that the one who is not affected directly can come and talk to the person. Not you're distracting my leadership, but you're distracting his leadership. And actually, finally, always God's leadership. We believe God wants to do something, and he's working through some authority. That's another big issue we could talk about, and we will see if we'll get there, the whole authority issue. It's huge now in postmodern times. The idea that God works through a leader and what he has heard is very foreign. We're like very strongly democratic. And if I didn't hear it, it cannot be the Lord. It's like, look, sometimes it's not up to you to listen. And then last but not least, commitment. Make clear commitments. And speak it out. We've just had a process, Susanna, maybe for you to know. We started this, now we had kind of had a pause a bit, talking about commitment. When Stefan and Eva took over the team, the leadership of the base, we had a new leadership team and said, well, what about your commitment? And like, if you're a bit like me, commitment is like, it always feels like I'm committed in my heart. I don't want to write it on paper and sign something and then I'm stuck there and I have a responsibility I don't want to have, and I think everybody is almost getting away from it. And so I started to look a little bit into the Bible and say, well, why is that important? Mainly around the question of why do I need to state it? But it's amazing. Everything that we can lean on with God is because he stated it. Like the Bible is God's commitment written out. We know God is loving and God is great, but sometimes it's really good to have a word, that you can take and say, wow, this is happening. And through that, what God makes it possible that we can enter into a way new level. He makes himself predictable. This was the word that I wanted to use. It's kind of, you can push God into the corner and say, but you said it. But he wants this. He knows it helps us. He wants to be dependable. He wants to be predictable to a certain degree. Not totally. I mean, obviously not. And to make a commitment is also that I make myself predictable. Yes, I make myself, people can come and push me into a corner, but the thing that I want to focus on is more the level of blessing that it enables. You can go way further and you can experience a deeper level of intimacy once you've made commitments and you've spoke them out and you said this is for good or bad time. Basically the example I like to use is marriage. Why do you marry? Many people say, we love each other, why do we need to make a vow and blah 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 blah, it's just and it makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody promised it to you and said it and wrote down and had the ring, it's like there's a deeper security in times of trouble and struggle to say, no, we both committed. And so this is where I want to say, do it. Commit to each other, and then, like in a good marriage, don't let the sun go down, deal with the things that you need to deal with. You do this, again, try to get to the point where you as a team can do it. Where it's not just in people's heart, or not, And also when you bring the challenge of commitment, again, it's about application. You suddenly realize stuff rises to the surface that is more like, well, why not? What's the point? And you see fears that people have, doubts, insecurities. Now don't push, like, commit now anyway, but then deal with that. But sometimes it only comes to the surface as we bring a challenge, and say. Is that helpful? This was now a bit of a longer session that we tapped into.
It's really good. I like it.
Yeah, I think especially the purpose, it's good to think about it early enough. Because sometimes in the end we realize, that wasn't clear, and then you also don't know if you had a success.
Yeah.
You never know, hey, was this good or not? What do we want to see? And sometimes you lack boldness to really go before God. And say, man, I want to see this, and pray for this. I'm frustrated if this is not happening. And maybe the question, how much am I willing to pay? I know I have many outreaches where I wanted to see signs and wonders, and but then kind of God says, how much? What are you willing to pay in that sense? Pray, maybe pray and pray is the same. And I'm like, yeah, well, this is also good. This is good. If everything is good, this quote, it from the SBS, with what you're searching for. If you're not searching for anything in the Bible, you might not find anything. If you don't know where your goal is, if your goal is everything and anything, you get everything and anything, and sometimes that's a bit frustrating than to say, this is what we want to go for.
Yeah.
Okay, when do we end it? 12, huh? Okay. Let me pass out some things, and then Susanna, I still need to send you some stuff. This is more prep for tomorrow. One is, some of these questions, understand your gift focus in the leadership team. And this is a bit more about apostolic, prophetic, organizational, team builder. It's not the fivefold ministry, don't get confused, but it overlaps quite a bit. So this is a bit of a spiritual role that you might find yourself into. And maybe you all have the same. It's just you figure out where you're leaning into. I think you've done this again, but you've done it before, but you could do it again.
I'll take one for you.
Yeah. Then I have another thing which is about, this is for later on, but I think I hand all these things out. Is this good?
Yeah.
If you have time, you can do all the quiz. This is a second one is approaches to reconciliation. I don't know if you got that or not. Maybe you have this one. Hopefully we can talk about it later on. This is if there's some conflict, and mainly I would say serious conflict. We did this in the leadership development course in Malaga. We had some role plays about, you're base leader and somebody has slept with somebody, and how do you deal with it? Or somebody has really stolen money, it's like, whoa, it's a deeper issue. Many people are involved. How do you go about it? And then to realize we all have certain preferences that we want to be dealt with. One of the verses in one of the translations in Spanish, it says, truth and mercy have met together, peace and justice have kissed. from Psalm 85, and they've taken these 4 words and said truth and mercy and peace and justice. And they define what is it. And sometimes we have some things that we really want to see happening here, like truth. People need to stand up for what they did. You know, they need to make a confession. It needs to be public. And some are like, no, but you need to be merciful with the guy. And, you know, what can we do? And how can we... And it shows a little bit what happens if you only emphasize one side. Who else will be suffering? You know, or what happens if you have maybe a couple of things that you have in mind, but one you're missing. And again, it's a little test in the beginning to just say, where are you leaning to? You're more on the truth side or more on the mercy side, you know, more on the justice side. There needs to be some retribution and consequences, and how can we prevent it to happen in the future? And some who are more on the peace side, it's like, how can all the relationships be healed and re-established, you know? So I pass this around. Then maybe some of you, most of you have done this already, and I want to do this still, a bit of work with a disc. Have you done the disc, Susanna?
No.
Never? Oh wow, okay, good. Then this is where I will probably work the most with tomorrow.
The shape.
Yeah, sorry, this is...
So, wo ist die Nachricht?
Here. Yeah. If you want, you could tag them. Tag them. Yeah. Don't tag it, because there will be there are other pages in between. With the disc, I need to explain quickly something. I don't have, usually you need to be a certified disc trainer with the license and la 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 la. So I don't have any of this. I've worked with the disc quite a bit. So this is material. The test is a simplified version. It's not as accurate as the big one. But this is what is allowed to use. Maybe I should say it like this. And the other pages I have retyped, like to fill in some things. We will later work with this. And there are some other pages which I will just show you. So as I'm teaching, I will show it on my computer, and maybe we can get, I hope we can get with the Skype, you can do a, double screen or something. So you can, whoever computer we will work with, that it's on there, and you can see it then on yours as well. But for this part, I need you to take notes, because I don't have a license to copy it for you. So I will talk about some things, you will see it, but then I need you to make your own notes. Okay. Just so you are prepared for this, if we work with this tomorrow. Now I have something else, and this is, I think, overlaps with the first test that I talked about with the apostolic and other things, but it goes a bit further. I've never worked with this. It's called leadership evaluation. Sometimes say self-assessment and 360-degree evaluation. I don't know if we will work with this, but it might be beneficial for you to do it as well. And it's a little self-assessment on your operational and management leadership, on your pastoral leadership, on your spiritual, apostolic and visionary leadership, communication skills, relational and team skills, character and servant leadership, personal life and spiritual leadership. It's all kinds of areas. And basically it's all kinds of questions, and you can rate yourself and say, I think I'm here, I'm there, you know. And then later on, that could be a foundation to talk about some things. And say, where is my really strong side, and where do I need to develop more? I don't think we will have a lot of time to talk about this. But, like I said, it might be a really good foundation to when you do your team building, when you spend later on, you know, you're somewhere in the staff. That might be something you can use. You don't need to, you know. This takes a bit more time to go through. That's why I give you the warning. Please don't be disappointed if I don't pick it up again. I think I said in the beginning, my challenge is always, that I have too much. So you will get lots of things to work with, and some might be good and some might not be. I think, like I said, tomorrow I would like to talk a bit more about DISC and dynamics in the team. Time flies quickly, I have to say this, and then we need to see. I think it might be good to talk a little bit about culture, foreign to familiar, talk a little bit about these things, hot and cold climate, because you're such an international school, not to mention you guys as a leadership team. And to get a bit of vocabulary, I think most of you are familiar. I need to see. If you all know the stuff in and out, we can cover it very quickly. But I think it might be still good.
Yeah, it's good having awareness again.
Sure.
Yeah. And then there's lots and lots and lots of other things, small group leadership, one-on-ones, blah, 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 blah. We see what we get, scheduling priorities.
Those will be very helpful, I think. One group and one-on-one.
I mean, I also have some teaching which we can also do later.
Yeah. So I might even
Yeah.
talk to you and say, what could you cover yourself? You
Yeah.
know, I mean, it's like, there's lots of things that you can do anyway. Are you still awake, Susanna?
Oh, she sleeps at 1.
Man, yeah, midnight.
Not that.
Okay. Good. I think then we stop it here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Let me pray. Is that okay? I still want to
Yeah.
seal this as much as we can.
Mhm.
Father, again, I started with this. It's exciting to be working with the DTS. Mainly because I said that personally often I want to sit in the front row. Maybe sit is the wrong word. But when you are working, when you are changing people, when you do things, when you are manifest. And this is, I believe, everyone's desire to see you at work above all things and to make room for you. We said that in the beginning. And I want to pray for this time, for these 3 weeks before the school starts, that we could see you at work. I want to pray for a hunger and a passion in areas where we have a desire ourselves to grow and to grow closer to you. And like we said in the beginning, there are many, many things that compete. Our to-do lists and responsibilities and pressures and expectations, sometimes real ones and sometimes just stuff we think is there. And I pray for your protection. Holy Spirit, I pray for every one of the staff, for Sudhir, for Susanna, for Simone and Ruben, Monica and Maya, that you would draw them and that you would prepare each one of them, that you would just give them things in their lives that are fresh to share, an excitement, a pounding heart for who you are and for what you want to do. And I want to pray for me as well and for all of us in these next days that we can really cover the relevant things, that it may be a blessing and useful, and that we sense that you are in there, that it's really filled by your Spirit. Amen. And I pray for a good night's sleep for Susanna. Amen.
Yes, I did.
Okay, that's it. I
Thank you so much, Timo.
hand it back to you guys. Bye, Susanna.